Happy Sunday. Welcome to week 3 of Uncovering Hidden Healings. Welcome to another vibrant episode of our show. I'm so excited. I'm your host, Arletha Lizana. I'm thrilled to have you join us today as we dive into another enlightening discussion on the power of natural and traditional medicine with a focus on African and African diaspora practices. So each week, we explore different facets of this rich heritage, bringing you insights and wisdom from experts dedicated to preserving and enhancing these invaluable traditions. This series is a part of our support for the African and African Diaspora Natural and Traditional Medicine Certificate Program, a collaborative effort between Saba Women Inc., Morehouse School of Medicine, and Prometra International. We hope to uncover hidden gems of knowledge that can empower and transform our lives. So grab your favorite beverage, settle in, and get ready for a journey into the world of holistic healing. So today we have the pleasure of hosting my sis, Nzingha Samuel Owusu, a remarkable healer, educator, and educational psychologist. Nzinga's diverse background and extensive travels have given her a unique insight into how culture deeply influences learning. Dr. Samuel Owusu is a healer, educator, educational psychologist, and writer. Her educational philosophy, the psychology background, and extensive travels have taught her that the culture in which people learn is just as important as what they learn. She has taught at Spelman College and Georgia State University, and now teaches graduate students in the education department at Tiffin University. She is the co-founder and educational director of an independent virtual K through 12 private school, BCEI Blackstar. Nzinga continues to advocate for holistic education practices, integrating traditional healing methods with modern pedagogy to foster a healthy and inclusive learning environment for all students. She is passionate about creating transformative educational experiences that nurture the mind and spirit. She lives with her family in Kumasi, Ghana, and in the US. So here we go. As founder, co-founder, and educational director of Blackstar, welcome, Nzinga. So, we're excited to have you. So let's get started. So tell us a little bit about your journey and what inspired you to combine education with holistic healing practices.
Thank you, thank you, thank you. Hi, everyone. So let's see, where should we begin this journey? We'll begin at 18 years old, freshman in college, and I was in a classroom and I learned about the concept of a reading in West African traditions. And I was so enthralled. I was like, wait, there's a way you can know your destiny and you can make sure you're on your path. And this really resonated with me. So that's actually what kind of centered me into traditional African spirituality. And that was my road into the rest of it. I fell into education because actually I just needed a job. So I fell into education. I was a student, and Saturday School for Scholars and Leaders at Georgia State, they were hiring for gifted students. And I was like, I could teach. I started teaching marketing, critical thinking, debate to these small children, and they were soaking it up. And I realized at the end of it, parents would come in. And I realized when the parents would come in, the way the children would perform and act. And I started to see a difference between the cultures. So I had a lot of students that were Indian. I had a lot of students from different parts of the world. And the parents would be like, oh, they're coming out of language class on Saturday. Oh, they're coming out of this class. A lot of my Black students would have one person come to see them perform at the end. A lot of my other students would have the mother, the father, and the grandparents come to see them perform. And I saw a difference in the way the students performed based on who was in the room. So that just sent me firing in a million different directions. I started with gifted education. I started teaching children from all over the world. And then at the same time, I started engaging this concept of readings, and that there is a priest that actually guides you on your journey towards your destiny. So when they all kind of combined, I guess I would say I was inspired. I was inspired to hear my own journey, and that this education journey was actually a part of my destiny. And then I was inspired by my own visibility in the classroom, seeing these students really take these high level concepts like marketing in the third grade, right? It was like third to fifth grade. I was teaching marketing concepts, and they were soaking it up. I was like, okay, well, there's something to this here. And after teaching and getting really good results, and really, they asked me, could you take double class load? Could you do more classes? I mean, it was really coming in. I went in, I would do these gifted education seminars around the US. And then I realized I did not see a lot of Black children. So I wanted to know, where are the Black children in the gifted education programs, and where are the Black families that are supporting them? So that took me on a whole nother journey. And I started traveling more. What actually hit at the same time was I was having challenges with getting pregnant and keeping my pregnancy. Why that was so important is because I went like head first into traditional healing practices to really heal myself. When I was in them, I was also studying. I moved to China for a year. I went to India. I went to Brazil. I went to Kemet. I went to Egypt. I went to Ghana. When I would go to these places, I'm looking for the healers, right? Because I want to know things for my own self. I'm also speaking to the teachers. I'm also speaking to people in administration. And they all just kind of did an intersection for me at the same time. So that's really how I found myself into this. I found it because I had my own journey of healing. And so when I'm sitting down with the healer, I'm also sitting down with the educators. I'm also sitting down with these leaders in community, and they're having these conversations, and I'm a part of the conversation. And that's how it happened. I was really, really inspired in graduate school when I went to Egypt with Baba Asa Hilliard Nana before. And he said, oh, this is the first temple ever erected at Pettisut, and I need a really good priest to make prayers here. Anyone who's a priest, can you please make prayers for the group tomorrow? It's going to be really powerful. And I was like, oh, I can't wait to hear this like powerful priest. I was like 21. He whispers to me, Nzingha, you're going to make the prayers tomorrow. And I was like, at the first temple documented ever constructed. Why
All
would
right.
I do that? Right?
All of the ancestors there looking at me.
Why would I do that? So I went to sleep literally like this. I couldn't figure it out. And he was also my teacher. So put I want to center this entire conversation around this interaction of a teacher seeing you and a master teacher understanding what it will take to unlock your magic, right? And bring you out. And that was life-changing for me. I made the prayers that day, and the result and the response from everybody was like overwhelming. It even went on YouTube, and then when I got back, I remember being at Fihankra African Jelly, and I think it was Allende, and he was like, "And Zinga, you just want 1/10 of the ancestors' brilliance," because I didn't know it. I was just pouring libation, like, I was like, "Yeah, just can you give us 1/10 of your brilliance?" And it became like a joke in the community. Like, Zinga asked the ancestors for just 1/10 of their brilliance. I was just I was at the pyramids. I was just, everything was overwhelming. But that's actually, that engagement was so inspiring for me, for a teacher to see me and see what was inside of me and connect that with spiritual healing. And then at night, we're hours studying culture, religion, spiritual practices, education. His wife, Patsy Jo Hilliard, was also the mayor. And so she was the mayor of
East Point.
what was the area? You said Southwest Atlanta, but there was a particular
East Point.
Yes, thank you, East Point. And so we were speaking with other mayors in the area. And at that time, they were dealing with the whitewashing of Nubian culture. So we were on Elephant Island, we were talking with the Nubians, and we were literally in a textbook. And they were going, these pictures used to be Black, and now they are looking like the Egyptians on the mainland. And there's a challenge. Our children no longer can see themselves in the textbook. And this is decades ago. So by now, I'm sure the textbooks, you probably won't even find that one anymore. I should have kept it. So we were all having these conversations, and I was at the table, and I was really young, right? On how can we retain our culture when we're being whitewashed by the mainland? And I would venture to say that's still the question that we all have. How do we retain our culture as a subculture within this greater culture that is literally trying to not raise our children to be magic seekers and create their own reality, but just kind of fit into another reality that's been distilled to them. So that's kind of where my inspiration came from. I was sitting at the table, really high level conversations in Kemet with Nubians and master teachers in the mayor of East Point, and I was 21, and I was just soaking it all in, and that just really changed my journey.
Okay, awesome. That's love. That's foundation. This is like, I can tell this is going to be a great conversation today. So maybe like talk about like how you founded, Black Star, and then like how, first of all, like how that came about, and then how did you decide that you needed to focus like, traditional healing practices into the school and the way that you're teaching the children. So explain. I know that's maybe a long, like 2 hour version, but give us the shortened version of that.
Okay, no problem. So I was teaching at Pearl Academy in phenomenal school. I think it's still there in Southwest Atlanta, and it's on these acres of land in the middle of Cascade, ran by Mama Virgie, and it was a beautiful program. And I met these wonderful parents, and I just decided I wanted to go into another lane. And so I said, I think I'm going to move to Philadelphia. Um, that's a whole nother story. We may or may not get there. And I was going to go into administration in a charter school. And they had this African Center charter school in Philadelphia. So I was
Yep.
going to go there.
Philly was one of the first places, yep, with the Afrocentric schools.
Yep. So I was moving there to just do all the things, right? And then some of the parents said, "What would it take for you to stay here and then do your own school?" And I was like, "I'm not interested. Again, I'm too young. I just want more exposure. I just want to engage it. I don't have to lead it." So that's been kind of like the framework that I've worked in. Like, I don't have to lead it. I'm just interested. I just want to like dip my toe in the water. I don't have to be in the water. And then they were like, "No, our children have gone from like here to here under your tutelage, and we would like to stay with you." And so those parents actually ended up founding the school. And then, of course, as anybody knows, with any new organization, you have drop off, right? The energy burns out and fizzles. And it was left with Alicia. And she said, "Will you do this with me? We're already so far out into the water." And I said, "Okay, sure." I didn't dream of being a founder of a school, but why not? And we worked with, at that time, we were working with Mama Marimba to figure out the name. We wanted to be Black Star Academy. And she said, "Get away from that concept of academy. It's a Greek concept based on blah, 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 blah." So that's how we got to Black Star Educational Institute. Trying to play with even the English words to find the best fit for our children. And that's how it was founded. BSCI was founded in Southwest Atlanta, again, around the corner from the Beautiful, in the back of the church, and the church really supported us. The same church as in Saroma, so there was a history, a legacy in the church. We were here, and Saroma was here, and we were doing the thing. And some parents came. We started with 5 students, and the next year we expanded to K-12. Which, anybody wants to talk to me about that, I would not suggest in a year. You go from 5 students to kindergarten through 12th grade. And then Omishade and I sat down and we started forming the curriculum. And that's how Black Star came about. And if I was to ask the audience a question, I would ask, imagine your favorite teacher. Why was that your favorite teacher? Right? There are these reasons why your favorite teacher is your favorite teacher. They were able to see you. There was a connection. Some reason, somehow, they introduced the information in a way that you were able to take it in. So there's something very real about the impact and influence of a teacher in the classroom. Teachers are actually healers in the classroom. So to bring the conversation full circle, what I found, I studied education in Jamaica. I studied it in Ghana. I studied in India. They all had a British education system. Ghana's getting away from it and establishing their own, but basically the establishment of a formal educational system is coming from the British system, right? Same as the one here. Our system is also coming out of the Industrial Revolution. So we're looking for consistency. We're looking for memorization. We're looking for, if you just imagine everybody just goes across a conveyor belt and then they all come out the same so that they could run this country. That was the establishment of it. Our children are so multifaceted and much more dynamic than that. As African people, we're much more dynamic than that. So we're pushing all of this culture into this box coming through trauma. So we're filtering the trauma and all the issues that our community is facing. And then on top of it, you have an educational system. It just does not fit the bill. So what happens is when a teacher can see you in the classroom, it is transformative. When a teacher is a healer in the classroom, the results are resounding. It creates a ripple effect. And I'm not sure if people speak of it this way, but to really clarify this, culture is medicine. Really want to drive that point home. Culture is medicine, right? So you're not teaching students, you're just teaching children. Those children exist within a community. The educational system should serve the community. It currently does not. It is a little bit disjointed. You have your educational system, you have children, and then you have a community. And then the community is trying to find like its vibe. We're like playing double dutch. We don't know where to jump in. Like, okay, my child can be great if they go to this school. And then what does be great look like? They get into all the gifted classes. And then what happens? They graduate, they go to the top university. And then what happens? They get a good job. Okay, but they're not a designer. They're not an architect of
Yes.
this world, right? In this society, they're not um, protected. They're not supported. They have mental health issues. They have spiritual health issues,
Mhm.
and
That's
no
true.
one's accounting for that.
Yeah.
But you have those children in a vested state from 5 years old to 18 years old. Can you imagine during that rites of passage, if you
Mhm.
have healers interacting, what can happen? It can actually be a healing force for the community because you're not teaching children, you're not teaching students, you're teaching children. So
Yes.
when you remember that these children belong to a parent and those parents are within a community, so we have to be very intentional about how we're using 5 years old to 18. That's a long
It
time
is
to have
awesome.
that many hours with children
Yeah.
and then do it by happenstance. Well, I hope they learn some information. You're one of the best and brightest. You get it. It's
That's
kind of like, but this is not a sustainable model. So we wanted a new model of education. We didn't just want a school. We actually wanted a new model of education.
Yep. Okay. Yeah. Awesome. So you made me think like, okay, so my one of my favorite teachers, my very first teacher, first and second grade, his name was Mr. Martin, and he was a black male. I know at that time period, so we're talking early 70s, that was an anomaly. So it was a black male in the classroom. I went to a school called Falk School, which was a laboratory school for the University of Pittsburgh. So they were doing all these different types of educational, innovations. And so Mr. Martin, he is about 6 foot tall, but to me, he was like 10 feet tall, black guy. And he always, like, there was a few black kids, in the classroom, and he always treated us like we could do no wrong. Like, you do not talk to my black kids, do not mess with them. They can do anything they want. They are super smart, this and that. So if you like, he would encourage, like, say we had these different like math level books, they were actually booklets, and you can kind of go as high as you want, and he would just be like, if I finished that one, he'd be like, all right, go to the next grade, go get some third grade books for them to do. Like, he was always encouraging us to kind of just go more. If we needed help with particular things, just sit down with us and help. But for the black students, he was like, you could do no wrong, which was like the whole concept of me having that type of teacher in the first and the second grade. So after that, it may have caused a little bit of trouble with some of the other teachers, because I was like, I can't do any wrong. Like, what are you talking about? But the foundation was already there. So when you talk about favorite teachers, I had others, but Mr. Martin comes to mind because he was foundational for me the first. I also went to like a school that some black people from the University of Pittsburgh developed for kindergarten and preschool. So I used to call it Liberation School. So, I do remember, kind of like that early foundation. So between kindergarten and first and second grade, like, it was super strong. So I get what you're saying. And the fact that we spend so much time in school, it's so important, to understand who your children are around and who's having that impact on them. So, well, let's talk deeper into your specialty in
Mhm.
terms of like traditional practices and education. So, just, give us some of your knowledge and wisdom. Let us know what you want to talk about.
Okay, here we go. Okay, so one thing is healing has this rippling effect. So if you do it to one child, that changes their interaction with another one, right? And it ripples through the community. And these cultural practices serve as a guide for wellness. So if you can implement culture into the classroom, into the educational environment, it literally serves as a healing rippling effect throughout the community. So that is the recommendation for us all. I even looked up recently these KIPP schools.
Yeah.
One is in Atlanta and it was based on the concept of love, right?
Mm,
The other one is based on the concept of joy.
mm,
Why? Why would a school system be based on this concept of love or joy? Because they're attempting to heal the child while they educate.
right.
So this is not something I'm talking about that's pie in the sky. This is something that's starting to trickle down to just mainstream um, culture. Like people are realizing if we could do a little bit more for the mental health, for the spiritual health of these children, they shine even brighter. And then that has a ripple. We may not see it in our timeline. It may happen in another generation, but we have to invest. So let me give you an example.
Okay.
Let's say you're at a public school, because of course I understand that at my school it's really easy to do that. So I can start talking about some things we actually did at Black Star. And we can also talk about what can happen in a public school arena. um, Let me start there actually. I worked with the Amar Center. I was founded by Salah Hilaire. It was a phenomenal mental health, behavioral health agency. And we had this contract, excuse me, with Atlanta Public Schools. We had it with Clayton County Schools, DeKalb County Schools, Fulton County School System. And we actually put therapists in the classroom. So this is not just something I did on a small scale. We also scaled this. I co-wrote the program alongside Salah. It was funded by the Department of Education, and we put clinicians in the classroom looking to change the outcomes. So everyone is looking. Everyone is looking at how can we help with the behavior, the mental health, the spiritual health. There was a child in one of the schools that we served, and he just would fight in a room with the teacher all day, and they would play fight. I remember he had his shirt off, and I looked through the window and I was like, what's happening in there? And they said, oh, we just assigned a teacher to keep him in there. It just keeps the environment quiet, and we just leave him. It was almost like an animal. They just kept him chained up in a room, and he would just be like wrestling with a teacher. It was the weirdest thing, but that's
Right.
how bad his trauma was, where he could not be in gen pop, right? He couldn't be in the general population with other students. He had to be walled off. It was very dangerous for him, his family, and the other students. But what if instead we gave him a transformative model, as opposed to let's just hold you to the side, which sounds like jail to me, right? I'm just going to put you here, and then after a certain amount of time, you go home. And when I spoke with him, he had seen really extensive trauma. Like his best friend got ran over by a car next to his leg, right? And then let's layer on, as a people, we have historical trauma. Okay, we have generational trauma. So we're already in an existence of trauma. What does trauma do is separate you. It makes you think that you're no longer a part of the group. You do not feel safe. It changes your nervous system. It may change your behavior in the classroom. So when we say we're going to ignore that and just teach, that might work for one child. That may work for two. It does not work for the whole. There are ways we can heal the whole while we're teaching so that everybody can win. Again, this is a ripple effect. You may not see it from that child. It may take a decade, it may take a generation before we see the result, but we know for sure it works. Okay, so let's fast forward back to Black Star. Some of the things we put in place is children have to perform. What are things that no matter if you bring in AI or anything else that will never change? You have to communicate and be able to present yourself. If someone says apply for a job, the person that gets the job is the person that can interview well, explain themselves, right? So not teaching a child how to communicate, you're really stifling their growth. They have to be able to express themselves. They have to be able to write. They have to be able to explain what they wrote. They have to be able to defend what they wrote. They have to be able to have reasonable thought. These are baseline. So we went for the base skills that they need to succeed. We have to think if you're educating a child in the second grade, you cannot teach them what they need to know for the world that day. You have to teach them what they're going to need for the world when they graduate. So you have to be a little bit ahead of the curve, right? You have to give them baseline skills that will not change. We can't predict what's going to happen with AI. COVID came, we did not predict that. The whole world changed. Black Star was already virtual at that time, so it didn't really rock us, right? Now we're completely accredited high school, but virtual. We were like, yeah, this is how we've done it all the time. But you have to predict what that child needs as baseline skills and then also layer on top the skills from the curriculum. Typically, if you have a smaller classroom and you have a captivated audience and you're also layering on intentional healing practices, you can actually get in more information than you could if you did not. You're mitigating behavior issues, you're actually having really strong relationships within the community. So there's a trickle down effect that actually does impact the classroom. Okay. So I can give you one example. On Fridays, they had a battle dance. This had a rippling effect that actually went down to their education. One reason they feel like the school can see them. They have a way to be seen not just for this person is good in math, but this person can dance, or this person has swag, or there's so many ways to be seen. We cannot only validate you have high marks in math. We cannot only validate you're a great writer. That may work for this child or that child, but what about this one? So you have to have this multi-dynamic approach where every child can be seen. They have a way to demonstrate their greatness. The tagline is educate our children to define their own reality. So you have to give them space to define what does your next look like? Okay, here's cursive, here's this, here are these tenets. How would you then use these together and create your next? So you have to give them a lot of space to write. There are like these really clear things you have to do. Writing has to be uppermost. Can this child write? Can they explain themselves? Can this child perform? Do they have to be the best dancer? No. They can go out there and just hit the shoulders, and the whole crowd will go wild because they're in it, right? It creates this fervor. It also puts us on the same rhythm and beat. So one thing that I learned from going back and forth to West Africa over 20 years, everything exists on a rhythm. The entire culture is moving to a rhythm. There's color, there's verb, there's movement, there's rhythm. And so you have to create that in you have to be very intentional about creating that in the school system. You have to create a rhythm that you want them to move to, or someone else in the school system will create that rhythm for you. So we were really intentional. We had drums, we had music, we played music. You can have a space to be wild. I go to school sometimes and I'm thinking, if a child has to be quiet all day, they can't talk at recess, you don't want them to talk during lunch, when do they get to speak? When do
Yeah.
they express themselves? That is very dangerous. A child has to have a way to express themselves. Otherwise, how do they even learn how to touch their own genius and apply it as a part of a whole, right? And you have to have cohort. You have to say, okay, for math, you're with this group. And in that group, you may have somebody who's struggling, someone who's doing really well, and someone at the middle. You allow the person that's at the top to actually have to teach somebody else. This helps them really fortify what they know in math. It also teaches them good character, right? So you have to be very intentional about the model, the way you're modeling education. These are small little things that we would implement, and we would start realizing, okay, there's a hierarchy happening in that classroom. What do we need to do? Let's change the tables. We had long tables, we made them circle tables. Our older students created picnic tables. So it was like a picnic environment, right? That change that changes the way they go to school. They can also write on the tables. So they can tag them. They can use graffiti. When they walked into the school hall, graffiti was on the walls. So they feel like they're part of the school culture. There's not a hierarchy. I'm not the teacher. I know all and I'm putting it down to you. We're in here together. This is your culture. This is my culture. I may enter hip hop here, right? And so I'm going to teach you this. You might enter hip hop here, and I might be like, "Who's that? Who's that?" And you're like, "Yeah, I'm trying to explain to you onomatopoeia. I'm giving you an example based on how I know it in my music." And then I ask you, you introduce me to your music, and then I'm like, "Did you know he actually sampled this beat?" And then we have connection immediately, right? So it takes an openness. It does, but it can happen. We did it. It's sustained. I can give you some major wins from the school.
Yeah, I was
Um,
going to ask you to talk about some of your success stories because I know
yeah,
there's a lot of them. Yeah.
one student I really want to highlight is Candace Lane. So she came, her mother taught there, Mama Fatima, and she brought us. I think Candace was in the 10th grade, and when she auditioned for the school, she played a guitar. And her mom is from Senegambia, and she's also I don't remember which Caribbean country, Guyanese. Okay, so Mama Fatima's no nonsense, and we know Caribbean, West African parents. You're going to go to medical school. You're going to go into legal, you're going to be a doctor, a nurse, or a lawyer, right? You're going to do something that's going to move our family forward, and you're not going to be a slacker. So it's not the easiest for a child coming out of those cultures to say, I want to be a tattoo artist. What? So she started with, I want to be an artist. And then that morphed into, I want to be a tattoo artist. So when she came, I was thinking, okay, how can I convince an Afro Caribbean parent that her child wants to be a tattoo artist and she wants her to be a not the easiest thing to do.
Right.
Um, so we fostered that in her. Omishade partnered her with I think it was Custom Ink. I can't remember the name of the exact tattoo parlor, and they allowed her underage to be an apprentice. Right, big on apprenticeships. If we want to educate our children to do something different, they definitely have to be apprentices. It also teaches them respect for the
Yeah.
culture of whatever career track it is that they're applying to. So she went there. Her mother allowed it. And when she graduated, she said, I actually don't want to go to college. I would love to go work in the tattoo shop. They offered her a job. Her mom said, okay, I'm trusting this path. Now she does her own tattoos. She's in a book. She's published. People come from far and wide for her tattoos. I would say most of my teacher population that receives tattoos, that's who they go to in Atlanta.
Mhm.
And her work is beautiful. Her
Mhm.
mother loves it. Her mom sends me pictures all the time. She's like, look what my daughter did.
Mhm.
Her mom is into henna. So her mom does love art. Her mom can appreciate the cultural aspect of tattoo. Um, but
That's
she
so and that's so deep how her mom's a henna artist and then she became a tattoo artist, but side story, but
she
yeah.
became a she became
Yeah.
a tattoo
That's
artist,
like
right?
ancestry. Yeah, it's like
It's
ancestral, right?
continuity. It's
Yeah.
continuity. But her mom seeing that as this is something that is viable, that was very difficult. So
Mm.
we worked together. I told her, I can't override your mother. we have to work with her. So I'd say, I think we can do this. I feel very confident. And she would say, you have to give me your word. Is this going to work?
I hope so. Look, I hope
But
so.
it worked. It
Mhm.
worked.
That's
We
right.
allowed that child to define their own reality, and it worked. We did not say you have to go to college. We
Yeah.
said, what do you feel? How can you contribute to society? She said, I want to be an artist and I want to tattoo. She tattoos indigenous tattoos. She's phenomenal. I have another student, Unique. Unique is a phenomenal writer. She said, I feel like Black children don't know how to swim. She said this early. She said, I would love to do a nonprofit to teach them swimming.
Mhm.
Like 2, 3 weeks ago, she just sent me Sankofa Swim. She was like, it's launched, it's fully up. And maybe Unique graduated 7, 8 years ago.
Mhm.
I don't remember how long ago it was since she was at Black Star, but she did it. She
Mhm.
created her own swim school for Black children to learn how to swim, right? So these children are doing it. I have Amina. She went to the UK to study neurolinguistics. She just got her second master's,
Yeah.
right? We
Good.
have
I remember Amina because I asked her to explain. I was like, "Now, what are you doing? Explain this to me." Like, and I'm a science person, love science and math, but she had to break it down. I was like, "Wow, I didn't even know that existed." So, for our kids, our children to be able to dream up these things,
right, right.
it's so important. Yeah, yeah,
So it's so I can't we challenge them to dream and then we equip them. We give them the pieces. We're also healing as we do it. We're understanding the trauma that's coming from the environment and we're being very intentional in working with the community. I remember we had meetings with Lawaba's parents to ask, what are your goals for Lawaba? And they said we would like her to graduate early. So she did. She stayed back a gap year. She went to St. John's. She went all the way through to her MBA and she moved to Ghana.
Mhm.
That was her track. That was the goals that her parents set. Another parent may set a different goal. So it's like, what does the child want to do? What would the parents like them to do? How can this be a contribution to the greater society? And how can we sustain them?
Mhm.
Also, as a master teacher, that is a healer, I'm also not dropping them off, right? So we don't say, okay, you're not in my class anymore. You went from the eighth grade to the ninth grade. I'll see you later.
Bye.
We stay with the child
Yeah.
because they're growing. And then after they graduate, Mom and Nzingha, I'm doing this. Mom and Nzingha, I'm doing that. Do you have any advice on this? So it's a sustained relationship.
So,
Relationships very important. So I really want to highlight that. It's a sustained relationship. And again, if I go back to my Baba Asa story and Kemet, when I came home, I was writing my master's thesis using hip hop to teach Black boys math. And it won thesis of the year for the College of Education, and it was getting all these accolades. And my professor at the time said, "I'd like to add my name to your thesis." And I was like, "But you didn't help me at all, right? Thesis? How can you add your name to my thesis?" I
right.
went back to my teacher, who had been a trusted partner. We had a relationship, and I said, "Baba Asa, at this university, do I have to allow it?" He said, "No, you do not. This is why." Boom,
Yeah.
boom, 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 and it gave me a voice. So, because we had that relationship and a sustained connection and trust,
Yeah.
I was able to keep going back to that relationship, and it was a healing force. It was definitely a healing force. And my name is the only name that's on my thesis
Right.
because of my relationship with the master teacher.
Yeah.
And I fought and I said, no, you didn't help me with my research. I'm
That's
going
right.
to do
And
my
that's
name.
and that just really highlights also the importance of having mentors. So just continually, it's not something that you just have, when you're like in high school or college. It's continual. In my big grown age, I still have about 5 mentors, and I'm sure I get on their nerves because I'm texting them or calling them and asking them questions. I know they're like, "You are old. Like, what do you want?" But we still, I think we'll need, our mentors like forever. Like you said, it's part of the community. We still need guidance. So
Mhm.
as we guide others, we still need guidance. So yeah,
Agreed.
I appreciate
Agreed.
that. Yep.
The other challenge we're dealing with is education is designed to power a nation, right? And we have this really weird, fickle, dysfunctional relationship in this current culture and climate with this nation. So it gets really weird on why are we educating our children. So I
Right.
think we have to, as a collective, decide we are educating our children to do what and why. And
Yeah.
then the how becomes very easy. And
Mm.
then we have to decide, do we want them to be broken over a sustained period of time, or do we want to be very intentional about our healing practices? A lot of different cultures, for instance, if a child does not have good behavior and they're losing focus in the classroom, we say medicine.
Mhm.
Well, in Ghana, my husband was explaining, you go to the parent will take you to a healer and they will mix honey with some traditional herbs, and that's what helps you sustain focus in the classroom. So
Right. And it's not right. It's not like Ritalin or whatever, the
not,
ADD medication. It's some
it's
herb.
not. So we have options,
Yeah.
right? We have this, we have legacy, we have culture, we have traditions, we have options. We just need access. So we can bring in, I was very intentional about using traditional African culture.
Mhm.
Traditional African culture has so many layers that we can learn from. And their education system has its problems. So I don't believe in glorifying and saying Africa has no issues. We can learn everything from them. But they have tradition, and tradition and culture, it can really solve a lot, right? We can learn a lot from that. And so when you reconnect, because remember, trauma disconnects you. So if you're intentional about reconnecting, you have to find a tradition that is deep and is typically connected to soil. So
Mhm.
here, if you find your family's not traditionally from here, you probably need to connect to a family or a tradition that is connected to the soil,
Mhm.
because medicine comes from the soil.
Right.
So at some level, you're going to need an herb. That's how it goes, right?
And you're
So
gonna need a herb, you're gonna need nature, you're gonna need grounding. Yes.
you're gonna need it. You're gonna need it. I remember when I moved to China and I was getting sick, and then a healer there told me you have to take off your shoes and walk in the soil, so
Yeah,
that the energy of this land here where the food was grown can change your body and you can take in the food.
that's right.
How easy was that? I mean,
Yeah.
I was literally like, "Ugh." And my friend Rob, he was like, "You need charcoal pills." I was like,
Yeah.
"Charcoal?" I
Yeah.
learned all of this because I went to teach there. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
But to teach, it was like this major. I remember here going to the doctor and they were like, "Something's wrong with you. We can't solve it." When I moved there, they said, "There's nothing wrong with you." I
Yeah.
came back and had a child,
Yeah.
right, Micah?
Yeah.
The concept of there's nothing wrong with you is changing on a cellular level. So
Yeah.
imagine if we gave that to our children. There is nothing wrong with you. There's nothing to solve. We don't
Right.
have to fix you.
Right.
That changes them on a very cellular level. Oh, there's nothing wrong with me. I'm not the black child that's behind in test scores.
Yeah.
All of that, those are very they're not just problematic to the child, they're problematic to the community because we listen to them.
Yeah.
Even saying we're solving a problem makes the person feel like they are a problem.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah. It's so deep. Like recently I went to a chiropractor, just, to get a regular adjustment. And the chiropractor said to me, he said, and this was one, like I have a few chiropractors, by the way, but this was one that was kind of like, near my work. And he said to me, what happened to you around when you're in sixth grade, when you're around 10 or 11 years old? And just randomly, this is what he said. And I looked
Mhm.
at him and I said, well, in sixth grade, I was the only Black student in the whole of sixth grade. And then in the school, sixth, seventh, and eighth, middle school, there were only three Black kids, one in sixth grade, one in seventh grade, and one in eighth grade.
Mhm.
And how he said, you're still storing that in your body. I was like, what? Like, I mean,
Yeah.
again, at this big age I am now, and he's telling me I'm storing something in my body from when I
Yeah.
was 10 or 11 years old. And at the time, although I was there, and I still do remember feeling kind of like sad and it was weird. Like my mom was working. So the reason why I was there. So I do remember feeling a little sad and weird that, I was away from my culture and things like that, but I didn't, at that age, didn't really get the impact of it, and literally forgot about it. It was like, no, I didn't even know about it until he was like, yeah, it's still in your body. So we got to get it out. I was like, okay.
And our bodies keep the score, right? We
Yeah.
we
So this
think
is
we move
sixth
beyond
grade.
it.
And I'm so old and grown and have a billion,
I know.
schooling after
All the
that.
things.
Went all the way back to sixth grade. So, to me, like you said, that shows like you have to continually address trauma,
Yeah.
in young people and older people, in school, and also try to prevent more trauma from happening in, when they're in school in the educational system. So I'm sure that we can all kind of point to something, in terms of like being in the public educational system, some facet of it that deterred us or, made us feel a certain way or things like that.
Right.
We're still carrying some of those things. So I wanted to ask you just like kind of like what are some of the challenges that you have faced in promoting holistic education and like, how have you dealt with those challenges?
So I will tell you, when we had the in-school services program where we were doing therapy in the school system, that one is easy, right? That one you can see clearly because people believe in science in this world.
Yeah.
They may not believe in nature and wisdom and culture and tradition, but they do believe in science. So if you say you're doing therapy, They can kind of give you space, but the level of importance of mental health and behavioral health was not seen. So if a child had something to do in the classroom, they would not send the child to therapy. So we have these, we're introducing these interrupters so that we can change the course for the child, but the teachers are holding on to the existing system.
Mhm.
They're actually not seeing the value of sending the child to go and get therapy during the school day that will help. And actually the behavior was so bad that it was stopping learning from happening for all the children. So
Mhm.
we were like, if we could fix that issue, you could even teach much more faster. But that was a major challenge for us. Another one sometimes is parents. So at a school, in a public school system, let's give an example. We can say, let's do this naming ceremony where, as a school, let's say we're the War Eagles. We all have the same last name, and you get to choose an aspect of your personality for your first name. You can look it up, and every child gets to say, I am Princess War Eagle. And they have like this sense of family
Yes.
around it.
Mhm.
This is an intervention, and it really changes the entire school population. However, it has to have buy-in from the parents and administration. That's typically where it falls. The
Mhm.
child will buy into anything you introduce because they're excited. There's an
Yeah.
excitement and a fervor and a, oh my gosh, people are investing in me, people see me, I get to be seen. That happens from the child. But then the adults are typically where you're going to find either administration is saying that's a little bit too, yeah, I don't know. Or the parent is saying that doesn't follow my tradition. So that's
Mhm.
literally, you can never do anything with a child outside of the context of their parents or the community. It is very difficult. It has to
Mhm.
fall in line. So that is a major challenge that I will
Mhm.
say, that we have. Even if you can show research, they're like, yeah, that sounds good on paper, but you have to establish a lot of trust, and sometimes trust in the community can take years to establish. You
Yes,
can't
trust is
just
big.
come in
Yeah.
and say, oh, we're going to do this intervention. Who are
Mhm.
you, and why should I trust you, and with my
Exactly.
child, you know?
Exactly. Yeah.
Yeah. And
Mhm.
by the time you establish trust, that population of children that you did all your research on, they've moved on, and you're on the next wave of parents, right? So maybe you say middle school, and trust took you 2 years, but they were only there for 3 years. Um,
Mhm.
so that part can become a little challenging. I have found another one is, we as Black people can get addicted to our child being special.
Mhm.
So trying to
Mhm.
find something that's sustainable for all children. Sometimes parents are like, but my child's already in a special program and they're fine. I remember reading Michelle Obama's book, and she said her and some other Black girls were being removed from the classroom for this program. And she's still thinking about what happened to the other children that were not
Yeah.
removed for this particular program. Right. And so that's trauma in and of itself, because there's a guilt, like survivor's guilt, right?
Yeah.
You
Yeah.
were saved, but
Mhm.
there's a lot of other children that did not have that opportunity, and they were just getting puzzles,
Right.
to keep the time moving in the day. And so you have to find something that works for all. And typically a parent is like, yeah, but my child is special, so
Mhm.
remove them and let them have their special program.
Mhm.
Um, and we have to just think collectively, has its challenges.
Yeah.
Um, I wanna also say, so I did a training at this one school, and when I went to go do the training, I remember it was a TA, a teacher's assistant. She was sitting in the back of the room. She was not my target audience. I
Mhm.
was talking to the teachers about when a child experiences trauma, it creates like a groove on a record. And
Mhm.
anytime you play that record, it still falls into that groove. You really have to do work to smooth out that groove,
Mhm.
because whenever the same thing comes up, they're gonna go back into that, right? That's what they trust it. That thing holds them up. So they're like, oh, you say something to me, I'm going to fight, because
Mhm.
that's something I can trust. So I was explaining to the teachers things we can do. And when I was done, I was really pouring into the teachers. And
Mhm.
the TA in the back said to me, when you were talking, I saw this light in the room, and it just re energized me to go back into the classroom. There was this light that I just felt like I hadn't felt in a long time.
Mhm.
And when you were speaking, that's because I'm being very intentional about the healing that I'm even doing at the teacher level.
That's
So when
right.
you say what are some of the challenges, is the teachers need healing as well,
Ah,
right?
yes.
They're also in there with their own stuff. And
Mhm.
so I wasn't even thinking about the TAs. I was just looking at these teachers sitting in the front, the people in the back, they were like my second. I don't even know if I even knew they were back there, to be honest. And
Mhm.
she got so much from it. I remember like vibrating, listening to her explain to me what she felt from
Yeah.
me explaining trauma and what they can do to heal these children. And she said it was healing for her
That's
because
right.
these are some things she wanted to do with her kids at home.
Mm-hmm.
So the same thing that's a challenge also is an opportunity, right? It's a challenge, but if we can get the teachers on board and if they can be engaged in their own healing practices,
Mm-hmm.
um, they can also be, and if we can elevate them to the level of master healer, master teacher. I
Yeah.
really don't suggest we have teachers in the classroom that are not master teachers. I just, that doesn't do anybody good. You really need to know your craft. I remember reading about Denmark's educational system, and they sent all the teachers back to school to get their master's degree, because they were just like, you can't half know it. You have to really know it,
That's right.
right? And then there has to be this spiritual element, this mental element. You cannot separate spirit out from Black children.
Yes. Yep.
That's the surefire way to kill them,
That's right.
right? They'll be
That-
shells. They'll be very successful shells.
Yeah.
If you really want a Black child to be successful, you have to put in rhythm. You have to introduce color. You have to have movement. You have to have a connection to spirit. You have to have a connection to community. You
Yeah.
cannot disconnect them. And maybe you don't have to be that intentional about it in Ghana because the culture is there. They're
Yeah.
in their home culture. So
Mm-hmm.
they're going to leave school in schools within the context of a cultural experience.
Mm-hmm.
But here, they're going to leave school and then they go back into this really awkward, traumatic relationship.
Mm-hmm.
It's kind of weird. I think back to Chris Rock. He made a joke during one of his stand up comedies, and he said, you have to think that reading used to be illegal. And so the first drug dealer was somebody teaching you to read. And he goes into his joke and he's like, yo, you need a R, like you need to learn these letters, you know what I mean? And he's
Yeah.
like almost like a dude on a corner, but it's letters.
Yeah.
Imagine just to read was illegal and you could get hurt for
Exactly.
teaching your child to read.
Yeah.
We're not that far from that
We are
experience.
not that far.
We're
We're not.
not that far out from that. So now everyone's like, we have your best interest at heart to educate. And I'm like, you all try. When? No, you don't. How? Like
Exactly.
you just made it illegal. And why were you keeping us from being educated? So education is this tool for upward progression, for it to change things. It is a change agent. However, you're not educating mindless robots, you're educating children. So they're
Okay.
within the context of a community. Culture has to be intentional. You know what I mean? Like we want holistic
Mm.
education that heals the child,
Yeah.
not I'm educating you so that you can program AI later. That's by happenstance. That's just because I'm a genius, and my genius, I can also program the next iteration of AI. But
Yeah.
that's not the intention of my education.
Yeah.
It's so that I could be a full-fledged, fully integrated adult. I'm whole, I'm healthy,
Mm-hmm.
right? If I notice my son is coming home and I'm saying, how was school today? How did you treat people today? What happened? Oh, why were they crying? Well, what did you say? Did you stop your work? When the director says to me, when no one is looking, he gave his own toy to the child because she was crying. I don't care what he learned on reading, writing, and arithmetic. I'm like, cool. For
Yeah.
me, good character that
Yes.
he feels good. Every day he says today was the best day ever. If he says anything different, I'm changing schools,
Mm.
because for me that I'm not willing to negotiate his
Yes.
mental, emotional, and spiritual health to turn out, oh, you're the top student in your classroom, but
Yeah.
how will we sustain our familyhood, our nationhood with children that are just super smart but disjointed
That's
and
right.
broken? Yeah.
Yes. I say thank you for that. So look, I was about to ask a question and the questions start coming in. So let's just tell the audience we're starting to open for questions. So, please put your question in the chat. So my question and the first question came in was kind of similar. So the question that came in says, can the parents' trauma interfere with healing the children's trauma? And my question was to talk more about, how they say parents are the first teachers. So it was taught so it kind of coincide with what that question is. So again, can the parents' trauma interfere with healing the children's trauma? And then any other questions, please put them in the chat.
Unfortunately, yes.
Yeah.
The parents' trauma directly interferes with the children's trauma. Okay, so case in point, I was teaching high school math at Tucker High School, and I was in one of the trailers, and so we had to be very loud and very intentional because the acoustics were weird, and I was trying to teach on the board. And this boy picked up his phone, and he's like, "Yeah, okay, yeah, no problem." And I said, "Excuse me, you're on the phone in the middle of me teaching." And I had the students at that time. You had to have a high school graduation test. in this Georgia. So that he failed math on his high school graduation test. I was your math teacher if he failed. And I said, you really need this. They're testing like next week. He said, I'm talking to my mother. I was like, okay. Yeah, respectfully, you have to call your mom after class.
Right.
He said, my mom wants to speak to you. Now, mind you, I'm literally at the board writing. So I said, okay, mom. She goes, this is why I gave him a phone for teachers like you. I need to know what's happening in the classroom.
Good.
Okay. Excuse
Okay.
me? He was like, yeah. You don't tell him to hang up the phone if he's talking to his mother. I said, well, I'm teaching. Okay, no problem. We'll follow up on this. He said, my mom instructed me I can leave the classroom right now. So his mom is having a full-fledged conversation with him. Now he's in jeopardy of not graduating high school. He's already 19 years old. Okay. So I was I was frustrated. I was sad. I had a mix of emotions because I felt like she did not have trust for me as a teacher.
Mhm.
Um, and she had her own traumas,
Yeah.
and she was not vested in him graduating high school, which maybe that wasn't his journey, but that was the goal in the moment. So definitely the parents' trauma have a direct interaction because she was emboldening him and empowering him to be disrespectful. And it was backed up by his mother. And a lot of times the teacher will call a parent and the parent will say, yeah. You're like, yeah, wait, what? You're in agreement with them?
With
Yeah,
behavior, yeah.
that's how it goes.
Yeah.
So what happens with that is you remember how many hours does the teacher have that child though? So that's why I said the teacher has to be a master teacher, should also be a master healer, because the teacher still has influence and impact. My what I did was when he came back to the classroom, I said, next time, make sure you call your mom after class. I said, I know she has valuable things to say. I kept affirming the mother. I did not tear her down.
Mhm.
Right. And I said, but I really want you to get this because I think you might really be a good engineer. And he was like, an engineer. So him and I established trust.
Mhm.
And I was like, yeah, all you need to do is learn two concepts. Then I said, I'd be willing to stay after class, excuse me, to help you with these two concepts. That relationship, him and I, he was actually one of my top students, right? I didn't pull him away from his mom. I validated the relationship, I affirmed her. However, I realized my influence could also assist him
Mhm.
because what was happening was he was leaning back on, well, my mom said I don't have to do
Then I
it.
have to do it, yeah.
Right.
Mhm.
And then I had to find a way, the concept of like Kungusa and Tima, like to touch the heart. I had to find a way to cut through to get to his heart. Wouldn't
Mhm.
you like to also be great and even protect your mother and even take care of your mother? And that actually inspired him. And he was like, oh, I could be an engineer. And I was like, yes, yeah, of course you can. I just need you to get this math. Don't you want to finish high school? And he was like, yeah, I mean, yeah, it's not a bad idea. And then I let him play music and he would come after class. And then I gave up some of my time. So yes, it impacts the child. I do not ever suggest a teacher say your mom is wrong.
Yeah.
You don't ever disconnect a child from their home community. You don't disconnect a child from
Mhm.
their home. But there are ways that a teacher can give of themselves to create a counter narrative and to touch the child's heart and to see something bigger in the child. Most people want to be seen. That's
Mhm.
what you realize in the world. So
Yeah.
you find a way to see a child and they will perform, right? Because they have a trusted relationship with you.
Yeah, and that was yeah, that was my question. So it was just kind of related to, how to look at, parenting. Like you said, sometimes we have, some parents are strong parents and, they're helpful and cooperative to the child's educational process. And sometimes they're obstructors, but oftentimes they're obstructors because they had their own trauma in the
Yeah.
educational system, or they're dealing with something. So usually there's a reason. So, how do you feel about parenting like rites of passage? So that was going to be my question. Like, do you, think that, how do you educate the parents on being supportive to educate their children?
So this is a great question, and I wanna hype up Dr. Shante Richardson. She actually wrote a really good curriculum for Black Star and parent education and rites of passage. And this is after our heyday when we were fully functioning in a physical capacity before we went virtual.
Mhm.
Um, and you can find it. I'm not sure how to find it, but in our follow up resources, I will definitely share it. And she talks about that continuity and using Adinkra symbols and West African culture to find those overlaps and overlays where parents can actually participate in the education system. So when I did my thesis, Gloria Mary in Florida, she was having these great results on these Black children that had the lowest test scores. All of a sudden, they had the highest test scores. So the governor even came to the school to see, what are you doing different? She used hip hop. Okay, this is when BET also was like at the top of its game. So all the videos were on TV, and she started watching them. At that time, I think she was like 54, had no interest in it, but she started watching them to connect with her children. What she also did was she invited a parent a day into the classroom.
Mm-hmm.
So every day, a different parent would take off. So to a parent, you were taking off like once every 3 months. It wasn't a major lift.
Mm-hmm.
What it did for the students was it changed behavior because someone's parent was in the room. What it did for the parent was establish trust, and it helped heal some of that trauma because they were like, oh, wow, I didn't even know my child was learning all of this. And oh, wow, I'm now relearning alongside my child. When I see parents laugh about this new math, I actually don't think it's funny because you don't want a parent to not be able to help a child with their work like that. It's actually a little dangerous. If you're going to introduce a new way to do something outside of the home culture of a child, you should also teach the parent so that the parent doesn't feel inadequate at home when they're trying to help with the homework, right? And they may not just want to do the math, but you don't want to say, I just line up 5 plus 5. And they go, oh, now we do 5 with sticks. And then we do a cartwheel. And then the 5 turns to the right. Ah, I don't know how to do that. And the child's like, oh, I need help. And you're like, yeah, I can't help you. So you really don't want to do that. So it's really on the school to educate the parent. So
Mm-hmm.
that's what she would do. She brought a parent in a day,
Mm-hmm.
a volunteer, and they would walk the aisles. She snapped. Everything was to a snap. They were memorizing, but to a rhythm. And when she finished snapping, there was no front of the classroom, there was no back of the classroom. She walked back and forth through the aisles, and then the parent would then pick up in support. She would say, hey, when I get to this point, if you don't mind just repeating what I said. And then that parent becomes a change agent in the room as well. So they also are able to help heal the child. They're able to get their own healing, and then trust is established. They get to see the way the teacher teaches. They get to know how to support at home. We start to reestablish continuity. So that's one way that I've seen in the classroom that worked really well.
Okay.
Really.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you. So, okay, so we have a short time and 2 questions. So I want to make sure we get these 2 questions in. So the question is, some say you can teach confidence. Can you teach confidence? That's the question.
Yes, you can teach. Yes, you can teach confidence.
Yeah.
Okay, I can tell you one way. So that's
Mhm.
why I say you have to have children perform. They have to go on the stage, and the stage doesn't have to be in front of 800 people. It could be just in front of the parent body, and they have to be able to express themselves. And then the more they do it, it becomes like any other muscle. It just becomes what they do. So Black Star students danced and they drum. I don't know if any of them were shy because that was a requirement of the curriculum. That's what they all did, and they're all just as great as they were from when they were in K through second grade. And we traveled. We did it at Georgia State University. We did it at in North Carolina A&T. We did stick play. We did Katie stick play. We did capoeira, and every child participated at whatever level. I don't know if they each had confidence in that thing, but they each showed up. You can absolutely teach confidence. You just have to give them something they can do and express it in front of people. It could be two people.
Yeah.
But when you give them positive feedback, like, wow, I didn't even know you could do that, that gives the person confidence to try it again.
Yep.
You can
Thank you.
teach.
Thank you. So I'm gonna go to the second one because the third one came in. So the second one is, how can you cultivate African concepts with other families in the community when African concepts and spirituality are still demonized?
Storytelling.
Uh,
I had that one ready in my back pocket and called it out. You
yeah.
use storytelling. So people don't mind an Anansi story. They don't mind stories about animals, right? So we've always used stories to really tuck the culture under. And I remember reading about indigenous people would use storytelling to even change the behavior of their children. And I was so inspired by that. So instead of saying, don't do that, they just say, there was a child and they used to always do that. And then, like the boy who cried wolf, that's a story, but it's a warning to the child. So
Right.
you can tuck the culture into a story. Most people don't mind if you tell a story, they just mind if you tell them the story is true.
Yeah.
That's really where you get the issue. If
Yeah.
it's a story, they don't mind it. It's only when you start saying, and this is really what happens in the culture. No, like,
Mhm.
that's not what
Yeah,
happens.
no, storytelling, like you said, it's so key. It's so important. Gisha Faye talked about that on the first live he
Yeah,
had, with Ifa and the stories and how they're so instructive. And, like you said, most people don't mind a good story. So,
they don't mind a good story.
yeah, that's a good one. Okay, so last one is, how do you see the role of traditional healing practices evolving in education? So, what things do you kind of see?
Um, that's a good question. One way I would see it evolving is becoming a core tenet of education.
Mm,
So, like if a child is not focusing, I would love for the teacher to be kind of empowered to say, "Hey, here's a list of 3 things you can do at home. They can change their diet. Maybe they don't eat sugar in the morning. They
yeah.
can add some honey with some natural medicine if you're into that. They
Mm,
can also do this." That is a traditional healing practice that they're taking and empowering the parent to
mm,
employ it. They're not saying, I told your child to do that. They're telling the parent, this is
mm,
what I suggest. And most parents are looking for alternatives.
yeah.
That's also key. Most parents want the best for their children, unless there's a mental health issue.
Mhm,
Most parents want to try something new. Most people are more open than closed. The closed ones are just the loudest. So I see it evolving where it's actually becoming more central to it,
mm,
where they're like, oh, there's a way my child doesn't have to be on medicine and they can transform and they can learn and they can be more whole. I would love for them not to be and hold the demons I have.
mm,
Most parents want their children to be better than they are. So if you give them, well, here's a model, they're open to it. It's only if you say you have to do this where you start feeling, oh, and then you add religion on it. That's really where people, but if you remove religion and you don't make it by force, most people are pretty open to something that can really transform their child in a healthy way.
mhm. Yeah, that's good. Thank you. So, I mean, thank you so much, Nzinga, for sharing your wisdom and experiences with us today. I'll tell you, this sister is brilliant. So, we're talking about education today, but her and I, we talk about tessellations, we talk about quantum physics, and our meditation for this year is on the importance of listening, really listening. And that's, just invaluable, listening to spirit, listening, to your ancestors, your elders, and what you need to do,
Yeah.
in your life has just been super invaluable. I mean, today has been truly enlightening. And again, we just a little tidbit. She has so much to share. So I know you are a serial entrepreneur. I know you got a lot of things going on. So why don't you tell everybody about the things that you're doing and then how to get in contact with you for each of those things? How
Okay,
about
great.
okay.
Black Star should be in the chat. So you can also find us on Instagram. We are enrolling theblackstar.org is the website, THEBLACKSTAR.org. And we are enrolling 9th through 12th, fully virtual. We also have a graduation coming up. So check us out in May in Atlanta. I'm
Yeah.
really excited. Um, so that's how you can find us. We also help, my husband and I have ENZ, and we help if you want to repatriate or you want to build a home in Kumasi, Ghana, we help you do that.
Yeah,
You
you
can
guys
find
have
us.
like a lot of homes already, right? Like
Yeah, we have over
already doing
25
it.
people in the
Here
community,
it is, like
and
over
that's really exciting.
25.
Um,
Yeah.
they featured us in Ebony Essence, all the top magazines featured us. And if you fly in, if you have an in-flight if you have an in-flight magazine from AWA or African Air, I forgot the second airline, between Kumasi and Accra, in the centerfold says My Kumasi, and it's all about me and all the fun things to do in Kumasi. That's probably one of the highlights of my career. That was really exciting that
Yeah.
they saw me as someone that could speak about Kumasi, which is a big deal in Ghana.
Yeah.
But yeah, we're bringing people constantly. We have tours. We bring them back there constantly, and then people are building their homes. We have 2 that are nearing finished. They'll be finished by the end of the year. 2 more. We have some finished, and then we have 2 more finishing. And one of the women, she lives on the islands. Another one lives in the UK. So people from around the diaspora are building there. So if you want to join us, that would be great.
Yeah.
You can find us on ENZ's page, and we will actually drop it right now in the comments if you want to
Mhm.
get to our page. And also EJEX. I'm an education consultant, so I do consult with school systems And I've consulted with school systems in 3 countries at this point, and I would love to consult with you if you have the need. That's EJECS,
Mhm.
www.ejex.com. And I'm a senior program manager for IT company, so I also do adult learning. I also teach college, and I do adult learning, and I do curriculum development for IT companies and major brands that you all know.
And
I help.
she has two small children, by the way, y'all. Doing all the things, right? Okay, I'm not gonna let you get out here until you talk about coaching too, individual
Oh,
coach.
thank you, thank you, thank you. Yeah. Okay. The one that ties us all together is I'm also a coach. I'm a lifestyle coach. So I do personal and professional coaching in Nzingaso.co, NZINGHASO.co. That's because I needed a way to do like Kagusa and Tima. I needed a way to touch the heart of people. I needed a way to really put my spiritual practice where I can talk to people about their goals and we can have that conversation and I can feel really good about them getting on way and on their path towards whatever it is their destiny or success is. So if you needed like a person to talk to, or like, hey, I'm having this challenge in life, or everything's going great, I'm ready for my next level, I am that person. That actually is what feeds me for all my other businesses are work. I love them, but they're work. My coaching is actually my heart work. So
Mhm.
if you want to engage me in that space, I would love to meet you there. And zingaso.co.
Mhm.
Yes, I love all the things I do. Yes, I have time to do them. Yes, my child also broke my light switch right before this call. So I'm in the dark with a ring light. So I mean, having a small child does.
Exactly. We gotta do what we gotta do. She's running things. So hey, it's her world. So we fix it. No, it's awesome. I just wanted to give this. We got one compliment that came in the chat. I just wanted to read this before. It's just saying, please have Nzinga return to discuss how the impact the next generation of parents for long-term educational change. So people are
I
really
love that.
interested, in this topic, the whole thing. And I know we just kind of touched on pieces of it. So yes, please connect with Nzinga. We'll also try to have her back as well. So, so to our audience, don't forget to explore our African and African diaspora natural and traditional medicine certificate program. Our next cohort starts in January. We offer payment plans to make it more accessible to everyone. Additionally, we have our upcoming natural medicine trip to Brazil from December 6th to the 14th. It promised to be an incredible experience. So again, thank you all for tuning in to Uncovering Hidden Healings. So join us next Sunday for another exciting conversation. Stay curious, stay healthy, and keep exploring the wonders of natural and traditional medicine. So goodbye for now.
Bye.